Tonight on PM Express, a conversation that is fast emerging as we try to contain the COVID-19 pandemic. What is the impact of this pandemic on the economy? Tonight, we'll be looking at how it's affecting our economy generally and also look at the job factor. You know that 313 cases have been recorded, and just this evening we had an additional, some additional cases, making it 313. One more death, bringing total fatalities to 6. Central region has recorded its first case, and Greater Accra region now shoots up to 274, still leading the league. Ashanti region 25 cases. Northern region also has 10 cases. Upper West region has 1, Eastern region has 1, Upper West region has 1, and of course the latest Central region 1 case, and now so making the regions 7 that have recorded cases of COVID-19. Finance Minister is tonight asking Parliament for 1.2 billion cedis to alleviate the impact of the coronavirus crisis on the economy. This has not, it just didn't go down well with the minority in Parliament. There were some banter this evening with the majority and minority trying to debate this. But let me give you a breakdown of how what this money will be going into. Food packages and hot meals will take 40 million cedis of that amount. Ghana National Buffer Stock Company will take 40 million of the cedis of that amount. Provision of water and sanitation. Remember, the President says government is going to be absorbing 3 months water bill for the country. I mean, everyone in the country will have 3 months bills being paid for by government. So 200 million cedis is going into water and sanitation. Waiver personal loans taxes for all health workers for the 3 months, and 241 million will be going into that. Allowances for 50% of basic salary for all frontline health workers for 4 months. And you remember the President spoke about this on Sunday, that there's 50% increment for frontline health workers. 80 million cedis. Finance Minister says he will be using in this regard. Now, free busing for health workers will take 2 million cedis, and soft loans for micro, small and medium scale businesses, 600 million cedis is expected to go into that. There is more of this one as the Finance Minister tries to explain to us what he needs that amount for. And also, you remember there was some banter in Parliament. The minority says that we agree that the President should take 3 months of the water bills for us, but the President or the government must also provide free electricity supply for the next 3 months. That's a demand from the minority. Now, it is also asking for a reduction in fuel prices in the coming 3 months as government absorbs water bills for Ghanaian people. Majority Leader says Cabinet is considering the proposal to absorb electricity bills as demanded by the minority. Now, the International Labour Organization is projecting 195 million jobs will be lost globally to the coronavirus. This is the figure you should be looking at, because as we try to deal with the pandemic and also help to reduce the effect it has on human lives, this is what we're going to be facing after the pandemic is dealt and done with. We're going to be facing 195 million jobs, job losses across the globe, and that is the reality. It is the reality. So I want you to watch this figure carefully. Watch it carefully, because that is where our conversation will be focused on. Now, we've also heard that the businesses are crying for government to intervene. Of course, you had the Minister of Finance in Parliament is talking about a stimulus package to cushion businesses, because this has been envisaged by government that definitely businesses will be affected by this pandemic, and that is why government is still in talks to come up with how the stimulus package will be delivered, who will benefit and who will not benefit from this stimulus package. Tonight the question, will these measures by the government be enough to mitigate the impact of COVID-19? 195 million jobs across the globe. How much of that will be in Ghana, and will these interventions by government mitigate the impact of COVID-19? Stay with us. Well, live on PM Express, my name is Aisha Ibrahim. Many thanks for choosing us. Professor William Mbah Boateng is joining me via Skype. He's head of Department of Economics, University of Ghana, and director and senior fellow of International Institute for Advanced Studies. Prof, grateful for your time. Also on Zoom, on the other side, Dr. Abena Antwi is health economist. She's also a human rights advocate and consultant. I'm grateful for your time, Doc. And Dr. Kwabena Nyarko is the Director, Labor Research Unit of the TUC. I'm grateful for your time, Dr. Kwabena Nyarko. Also joining us via phone is Setchuma Kwabwa, who is CEO of the Association of Ghana Industries. I'm grateful that all of you are able to join the conversation. Quickly, let me start with you, Dr. Nyarko. The International Labour Organization is projecting an unprecedented 195 million global job losses due to this coronavirus pandemic. From the TUC's point of view, how bad is the situation with potential job losses in Ghana?
Thank you for for us there to us the iron that shoe. We have asked a large number of people to sit up.
Well, we'll try and fix Dr. Nyarko's line again. Let me get to Chum Akwaba there. If you can hear me, what ways is this pandemic affecting the industries?
Well, thank you very much, and good evening to your viewers. Definitely, it is having a serious effect on businesses, and it's across sectors and across different sizes of businesses. As you know, businesses are down now. Most of the workers are home. Companies are not going to their factories and producing, except a few, those that are into production of essential items such as sanitizers and pharmaceuticals and other products that are considered essential. But the rest are all at home. So once you are producing, it definitely has a terrible effect. And even apart from those who are not producing, the entire chain of businesses are also heavily affected, because if you produce, you need a distributor to take the goods to the retailers and the wholesalers before it comes to the final consumer. So the entire chain of businesses are down. Apart from manufacturing industry, we also have the airline industry, hospitalities, and all that. And the health is severely affected. So it's a serious effect of business, this pandemic situation.
Well, let me bring in Dr. Mbah Boateng, who is a labor economist. There are predictions the global economy is heading for a major depression. Can the Ghanaian economy survive this?
Well, thank you very much. The Ghanaian economy, the global economy in Ghana is a subset of the global economy, and it depends on how long this make goes on, and then how we put measures in place to be able to meet the challenge. Direct question and the answer here is that whatever the situation we find ourselves, should be able to navigate the situation.
All right. I hope we have Dr. Abena back on the line. Doc, I'm curious to know from the health economist point of view what your assessment of this crisis is as it relates to the economy.
Good evening to your viewers, and thank you for inviting me to your program. The impact of the COVID-19 is devastating, and this one has not spared any sector. It's the effect of the COVID-19, actually, we haven't yet experienced it. A lot is going to happen based on the longevity of the pandemic, how much we are going to have to spend to keep ourselves safe, how much we are going to spend to keep afloat, how much we are going to spend even to prepare for recovery period. So while it's devastating, in terms of quantum, we can't put any number to it right now.
Wow. But the finance minister was in parliament today asking for 1.2 billion cedis to mitigate the impact of coronavirus on the economy. How much of the difference will that money make, and where should that money be spent tentatively?
The finance ministers, I listened carefully to the areas that he selected to spend the money, so the amount that he's asking for. And there is some logic to it. I'm going to tell you why. There is a certain paradigm that has already been researched and is being used. It's something that the World Health Organization has been talking about for a long time now. It's called the social determinants of health. And I see in the distribution of the money a certain logic in that, in terms of they are looking at food, they are looking at water, water and sanitation, they are looking at the health workers, which for me would go into the health and healthcare services. I also see that quite a substantial chunk has been put aside for medium SMEs, which is also, for me, it's critical. But there are other aspects, the other areas that I would want to see as preparation towards our recovery. But for now, the areas that have been mentioned are critical. I would want to see a lot more. I would have loved to see a little more in terms of the food buffer, because we don't know how long we are going to have to accommodate COVID-19 in our system. However, the distribution goes along that structure that the WHO has prepared before, which is the social determinants of health. As we go on and we talk more, I would go into which other areas we can focus on. But I think he seems to have had some of these areas right.
Well, when it comes to job losses and, talking about the labor front, the TUC has always been at the front fighting for workers. I'll be glad to have Dr. Kwabena Nyarko back on the line to explain to us what kind of assessment TUC has done, and what is the TUC envisaging will be the cost to the labor front. But let me quickly bring in Sechuma Kwaba here. Here's a quote from the finance minister and a point that the president has also made. He said, the picture is grim. However, as the president has stressed, he said, COVID-19 pandemic presents an opportunity to boost domestic production and consumption. The plan is for Ghana to use the opportunity to increase the production and export of commodities, for which the country has comparative advantage in the trade within the West African region, among countries that have not closed their borders to cargo. What's your reaction to this statement from the president?
Well, thank you very much. I think definitely the president is right. It's indeed an opportunity to increase our production and our output. There are several areas that we can touch. Indeed, we are highly dependent on foreign products, which is not very good for the country. When the countries that we are depending on close their doors, it means that we're going to have a serious problem. So it's indeed an opportunity to really look at our whole industrial development landscape and see products that are essential to our development and make sure that we actually produce enough of those products. It is critical. And therefore, I think that it is, we need to have a strategic move towards this. There are several areas that we should look at. If you look at the aluminium industry, strategic industrial areas such as aluminium, iron and steel, and all that. These are value chains that have critical development importance. We can also look at the agricultural development or the agri-value chain. These are all critical areas that has to be developed. And therefore, it's an opportunity to really look at our industrial landscape, push in resources to areas that we think is critical to us. We can select industries that we think if we support them, they can have a positive multiplier effect. We also have the Continental Free Trade Agreement with us. It's an opportunity to enter the rest of African market. This is a strategic period to develop all this. So I think the president is right. The most important thing is, what do you do to resuscitate industry? What do you do to revamp industry and put them in a position where they can effectively compete and do more business and expand and employ more people for us? That is what is
well, increasing production and exporting commodity sounds very good, but this doesn't happen in a day. This doesn't happen with just talks. It must take something to happen. Now, that's why I want to bring Dr. Baa Boateng in. What will it take for this to happen, Prof?
Well, in terms of trying to revamp the economy, I mean, currently, where we find ourselves, the concentration is supposed to be on our health sector as to how to be able to contain the situation. And when we are able to contain the situation, then we ignite the engine. And here, trying to see how best we can push the economy again. So here, the production aspect is very important. But then let me broaden the discussion for us to know that what we are facing and the effect will depend on the structure of the economy. If you look at the measure that the government has put in place, you see Accra, Kumasi, Kaswa, Tema being on lockdown. Other parts of the country are not on lockdown. So you can look at the sectors and see where actions are going on and where actions are not going on. For the services sector, which normally takes place in the urban areas, this sector is well affected. However, if you go to areas like mining, you go to areas like agriculture, still activity is going on. So currently, as we sit, if you look at the measures and what is being done, the major effect is on manufacturing and services sector, especially tourism, transport, and the likes, finance. So this is where the emphasis will be. So if we are able to stop at this point, then it means that government has a bit little to be able to ignite. But if it affects the entire nation, where you see that even farmers will be able to go to the farm, fisher folks cannot go fishing, and agricultural sector is affected, then it means that the entire economy is down. But where we are, I think the measures that have been put in place, for instance, trying to ensure that the micro, small and medium scale enterprises are given some kind of facility to be able to start something, is a way to start bringing back the economy in terms of production.
That sounds great. That really sounds great. And I'm hoping that the strategy is just like this. But we can definitely seize the moment and also grow our industrial capacity when it comes to health supplies. Can we not, Dr. Abena, if you're there? I mean, yes. There's so much need out there for medical supplies that people can take advantage of, even in this crisis.
Yes, Aisha, I'll tell you this. The scenario we have with COVID-19, for me, is as sad as can be, but it also presents to me so many opportunities that a country can take advantage of for recovery. If we are going to look at the health, let's say the manufacturing industry that is producing the PPEs right now, I think that isn't exactly a bad thing. It is very good, but you know how our system tends to be. When people start producing a certain kind, you get a lot of manufacturers rushing into that kind of sector, and that will create some glut. The challenge is that we are going to have some areas that will not be producing at all or manufacturing for some time until COVID-19 leaves us. Basically because, well, first, there is no demand for their services or their products, and secondly, where they may source their raw materials from, maybe from China or some of these developed countries, which are also, facing the challenge of COVID-19. But on the positive side again, I see that the MSMEs are going to be able to reinvent themselves to fit into the new normal, because post-COVID-19 calls for a new normal for everybody. Our lifestyles and everything have had to change, even within these few days that we've had to stay at home. There are things that people may have built competencies for, which at first they may have paid for to gain those services. Now they don't need to. So it calls a reinvention of those in the small to medium scale enterprises. A time is also going to come after this COVID-19 period where, as the ILO has stated, 195 million jobs are going to be lost. But it does not have to have that kind of negative impact, because, mind you, even before COVID-19, there was going to be a certain change, paradigm shift in the system of working, where artificial intelligence was going to be in the system. There was going to be more employment of different highly advanced technology, which was in one sense going to lay people off anyway in the next 5 to 10 years. So I'm trying to be cautiously optimistic by saying that whilst we are looking at the negative, we should also look at what we can do to reinvent ourselves in terms of production lines, in terms of services, in terms of even the commerce, and the restructuring of the economy generally.
Thankfully, Dr. Kwabena Nyarko has joined us. He's Director of Labor Research and Policy for the Trade Union Congress. Grateful for your time, Doc. Earlier, I was asking how bad the situation would be with a projection of 195 million jobs to be lost globally. From your point of view, the TUC's point of view, how bad will this be, looking at potential job losses also in Ghana?
Thank you. I think it is really bad. For the mere fact that we are already struggling with jobs in this country. You have graduates that before COVID were already struggling to find jobs. The data will show you that and you have to take about 5 years to get your first job. So on the basis of this, and given the fact that we now have a situation where many people or many businesses are closing down, we are then adding to the numbers. The numbers of people struggling to get jobs that meet their skills. And let me mention that it is not just the manufacturing sector. It is the hardest hit. We know of the hotels, we know of the restaurants, but we also know that even if you take the agricultural sector, the very former end of the agricultural sector, which is linked to export, is catastrophically suffering. You have companies in, say, the export of banana. They export banana almost on a daily basis. And these are sent to Europe. Today, they can no longer do that. And some of these companies are employing in excess of 3,000 workers. All of these workers are now staying at home. Let me also mention that these are the very first direct impacts. There are likely to be secondary impacts as people lose their jobs, lose their income. We can only hope that the measures we are putting in place will mitigate both the direct and the secondary impact.
Well, it does look like the impact will be there. But Sechuma Kwabwa, are your members already laying off, or is there a plan to do so?
You know, the way industries plan, they are always catering for emergencies of this nature. So it's a difficult situation, but I wouldn't say they are laying off. But definitely to have an impact on jobs, as has been said by my other colleagues, because, you know, industries use different kinds of labor. There are the casual labor who comes in to help occasionally. So in situations like this, you only use your permanent staff, you don't use the casual labor. So definitely they are going to be affected. There are labor, normally they run shifts. So if you are running 3 shifts and you are having a terrible effect of this nature, either you are closing down, you are not running at all, or those who are producing are also producing in less volume, and therefore they will run maybe 1 or 2 shifts. So definitely it's going to affect labor productivity. So it has an effect, but I wouldn't say that they are laying off. I only hope and pray that this wouldn't last too long. If it lasts too long, they wouldn't have a choice than to start considering deploying some of the labor resource. Otherwise, they can't survive. And it's the reason why the stimulus package becomes very critical, so that immediately after this, you have the industries, resuscitated and coming back and doing the volume that they were doing, and then even doing more. So if there's an assurance of a support mechanism that enables them to continue production, they will not lay off workers. Even if it's going to be a layoff, it will only be temporary until they reorganize themselves and bring them back, and perhaps even employ more. So I wouldn't see it to be so negative, but it all depends on how long it lasts and the mechanism you put in place to support industries in this difficult time. I think that is the most critical thing now. But it's not the plan of any industry to start laying off workers. But industries are private sector businesses. They must survive. They borrow funds. They take on all kinds of resources to be able to stay in business. And if it gets to a point where your expenditure far exceeds your revenue, you have no choice than to cut down your expenditure. So you start looking at areas that is possible to cut, and the immediate area will not be labor, but it gets to a point where you have no choice than to cut down on labor as well. So I wouldn't say for now they are laying off, but that possibility is there, unless the situation doesn't last too long, and then we also develop the necessary mechanisms to support them.
Well, Dr. Otu, you made a few demands when you recently met the president. Have those demands been met? And I mean, for example, go ahead, Dr. Otu.
The most important of that was that we need to have a lockdown as an important measure to spread the virus, to stop the spread of the virus. But in addition to that, we also thought that in order to assist businesses to stay with their workers, there was the need for government to support their employers. And here, let me mention that it is extremely important that whatever stimulus package we provide to businesses, we must be clear in our mind what is the objective of providing those stimulus package. We, from our perspective, think that it should be to enable the businesses to retain their workers. And that also means that, because it is important, otherwise you will give support to people and they will end up doing all manner of things with the money you give to them. Especially in a time when production has gone down, when demand has gone down, when the export is down, it is important we ask ourselves, why are we giving support to them? We saying that it is important, but it is only important because we want to safeguard job losses. And it is also important that we do not need to get to a situation where job separation occurs. And then after the crisis, we try to bring back employers and workers. That transition might not be too smooth. So our purpose for granting the stimulus should be crucially to help employers to retain their critical staff.
Well, those are very interesting points you've made there, but it's very important that businesses are supported. That's why the stimulus package is very, very important. Now, how to distribute the stimulus package is also another conversation. Who benefits and who doesn't benefit is another conversation that we need to have. But government plans to give 600 million cedis in soft loans for micro, small, and medium-sized businesses. How much of a difference will this make, Professor Bam Boateng?
Bit of difference because you look at enterprises or micro and small entrepreneurs sitting at home doing nothing. If they are able to overcome this challenge, you need to have something to start with. Of course, don't be surprised that we still have some micro firms that have laid off one or two of their workers because of the fact that they are not producing. So we have heterogeneous kind of enterprises along the way. So when we are able to overcome the situation, of course, they need something to start with. And the facility will go a long way to support them. In a broader sense, I think we need to bring employment in from a broader perspective. Normally, when we are analyzing issues of job losses, we focus only on formal sector, but the bulk of the employment is in the informal sector and in self-employment. If you look at employment figures, you realize that government employs about 600,000 people in Ghana. So if you take about 12 million people who are working, government employs about 600,000 people. And government, being the father, will not have that luxury to say, I'm laying off workers. Government will have these workers on board. So that must be made clear. When you come to the private formal sector, you will have about between 900 and about 1,000 at 1.2 million. So when you combine these two, you have within the range of 1.6 million and 2 million formal sector workers who are going to be directly affected. But 600,000 will be absorbed by government. Then there are about 90 or let's say about 87% of those in self-employment. Their employment status must also be looked at. Of course, whatever activity that they do is tied to the apron string of the formal sector, because the formal sector make demand for their products. So if we are able to tame or reduce the layoff, we are able to help employers not to lay off workers, we are able to get private sector to start something, then it means that they are also going to benefit from it. So I thought we should have this in broader context. Otherwise, it will be like the job losses will only be for those in the formal sector. But those in the self-employed, even though they are not going to have that direct kind of job loss, but theirs is tied to the apron string of the formal sector. So whatever happens in the formal sector will also affect them. So whatever stimulus package that is coming on, when it's able to get the private sector on board, then the benefit will be enormous.
What would be interesting to know is how or to what extent these interventions will save the economy. And Dr. Abena Antwi, to what extent will these interventions save the economy, and what more can we do if these are not enough?
some sectors, because some are going to be hit more than others. As to what government is trying to do, I see it as quite helpful at the early stages, but to be able to sort of build up some confidence in people who patronize the services first of all, or the products of those in the formal and informal sector, is going to take a bit of time. I'll give you an example. I'll give you a reason. So let's say take the tourism sector, tourism creative arts subsector, where it's not only the hotels and the ancillary services that go with what the hotels provide, but it goes with, of course, the restaurants and the chobas and all the others. Now look at, for instance, the musicians who, like maybe 3 times in a year, would provide maybe a concert for more people to come. It's part of life. We need to also enjoy so that we can balance our well-being. Now, if you have, say, a Shatawale or Sarkodie on stage, they are not there only by themselves. They normally would be there with a team. Look at the big team behind them, and each individual in that team, as in somebody is a pianist, somebody is a guitarist, whatever, they represent different households, okay? So if the rest of the year, depending on how long the COVID-19 stays with us, it essentially means that because of social distancing, we can't have programs like that, okay, which affect bottom line of these other people, these people in that ecosystem I've just described to you. The government would put in some measures, and it would be interesting to see how the stimulus package rolls out. But what is critical to me is the fact that there would be some industries or some organizations in the different groupings of the SMEs that may still be left redundant because we don't have demand for their services or their products. So I would want to understand, for instance, if what government is doing is not only to give reliefs in terms of financial, but for instance, we'll be giving technical support to those SMEs that can reinvent themselves, just so they can remain relevant and will be able to at least provide for a certain number of the labor force. So government's work now is double-faced, and I hope that it's not only the money aspect that they are looking at, but it's also going to be the enabling environment, everything that has got to do with the survival of business owners.
Well, I'm happy that you talked about the hospitality industry. Hotel occupancy rates are down from 70% to under 30%, and staff are being sent home. Even before the impacts of the current lockdown, restaurants were already experiencing an average drop in patronage of 60%. Scheduled international conferences in Ghana have been cancelled. That has also led to thousands of hotel rooms and beds being abandoned. Dr. Barbara Boateng, I need you to address this for me. What's your assessment of the impact in the hospitality industry?
Well, looking at the hospitality industry, that is the hardest hit in terms of the impact. And if we look at the impact of this COVID-19, we look at the short term, medium term, and long term. Some sectors will be able to start immediately the pandemic ends. Others will start maybe and pick up as time goes on. But for the tourism industry, especially the hotels industry, and also the aviation, that is where the challenge will be, and it will take a bit of time from my assessment. For instance, if you look at our hotels, and as you rightly said, the consumers of the services are international conferences and people who travel to our countries to be able to, to patronize our hotels. It will take a long time for international travel to pick up. And therefore, if it is not picking up on time, you expect that demand for hotels, especially in the big cities, will go down. It wouldn't be surprising to find out that countries will be very, very careful when it comes to allowing citizens from other countries to enter their country. So even international conferences, it will take a bit of time before it will pick up. So for the hotel industry, the effect in the short, medium, and longer term is quite big.
Great, Professor. But let me get back to Dr. Otu on this one. I recall one of the demands you also made was to for employers, for instance, to grant leave to workers who need to be home to care for their children until school reopens. And then you also wanted employers to allow workers who can work from home to do so as a means of minimizing interactions at workplaces. Now, how has that been done? I mean, from where you said, from your monitoring, are you satisfied with how employers are taking this?
To a very large extent, as Akabwa said, the employers haven't done badly. We know of some hotels that have asked their workers to go home, but they are still paying them. But so it all depends how long this crisis go. If it extends, you can expect those employers trying to lay off workers. But our demand is in the context of where we did not have a lockdown for it. But we still wanted to decongest the cities, the transport. So then we ask all those that have outstanding leaves to take their leave, and all those that can work from home to actually also work from home. But let me come back to the question of stimulus. Professor Babuason is right that we don't look at just the formal steps. Today, we know of market women. Even when they are allowed to go to the market to sell tomatoes, there's nobody there to buy the tomatoes. Their capital is actually down the drain. We know of many people that are selling that can no longer sell. Now, the 600 million we are giving to people, it is important, it is critical. It will help them replenish their capital. But we have to be also careful that we do not give money in the name of building small enterprises, only for them to use the money to supplement their income. Because in a lockdown situation, household expenditures increase. So it is critically important that we sit down and analyze the actual impact, the real impact of this crisis on people. And we know how we mitigate each facet of the crisis or the impact. Otherwise, we may have very good intentions, but the solutions we prescribe will actually not help meet those intentions.
That's a very valid point you've just made there. Our intention.
And I'm happy to mention that actually we are in.
Go ahead, Doc.
We are actually in touch with government. We are in touch with government, and we are analyzing these issues. We have taken.
I think
taking the economy sector by sector.
I think we're losing Dr. Otu there, but he's made the valid point and says that we need to really streamline this and make sure that we don't, miscalculate, and then at the end of the day, we may have good intentions. But Sechuma Kwabwa, briefly come in for me. What do you want to see in the coming days as government concludes on who benefits from this stimulus package?
The engagement is very important because the business people have practical experiences on how best to help government structure this, develop the right modalities to have the maximum impact. I think the benefit, the stimulus package and all that goes with it should be properly targeted. There are industries and companies that are severely affected by this COVID-19. They have to be looked at separately from those that are moderately affected. So you have to look at it from different angles. You should also take the opportunity to bring, there's a lot of talk about how to support the informal sector and all that. It is very important you support the informal sector. At Ghana, we are highly informal, and that is also not helping us. Government is putting in all these resources. Government must get the resources back somehow in taxes. Otherwise, where are they getting these resources from? All the money they are taking, they are more of loans, which have to be paid back anyway. So we need to find a way of improving the situation of informality and bringing them to the formal sector so that they all pay the right taxes. In a situation like this, you can use a facility of this nature to help bring this up. Again, we shouldn't also only look at the situation today. We shouldn't only look at companies that are affected today. We should take the opportunity to also look at the more strategic industries that have to be developed. We are bringing in funds. I'm sure government is getting, relatively at this time, the World Bank, the IMF, all these international development agencies are bringing in support, which is coming in much cheaper than the normal commercial facilities. We should channel such resources to areas that are strategic. That is going to help us in the future. Again, we shouldn't also
certainly these are things that government must look at and properly target the businesses that will benefit from this stimulus package for it to achieve its intended purpose. I'm grateful that you joined us on PM Express. Professor William Bah Boateng is head of Department of Economics, University of Ghana, and director and senior fellow of the International Institute for Advanced Studies. Dr. Abena Entry is health economist. Dr. Kwabena Nyarko-Otu is director, labor research and policy at TUC, and Sechuma Kwabwa is CEO of Association of Ghana Industry. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. Enjoy the rest of your evening.